Hey everyone, and welcome back. If you are new to my channel, my name is Nello, and I make videos to address media stereotypes of nursing while encouraging nurses to practice with excellence. In today's video, I want to share with you 7 actions I think nurses can take to gain greater respect as professionals. I'm always talking about nurses being valued and nurses being respected, and while that is true, especially within the media, I do want to acknowledge that as nurses, we have a role to play in this becoming a reality. So these are some things that I think that as a profession and as individual nurses, we can do to gain the respect that we deserve. So let's go. Number 1, staying informed. So guys, we know that healthcare is a field that places such a high value on acumen and aptitude, just knowing your stuff and being great at what you do. People respect that a lot. So as a current nurse or a student, for instance, I'm sure you may recall nurses on your unit or even during your nursing school rotations. These nurses just seem to have it all together. They had the answer to everything. They were brilliant and just very inspiring. Maybe you aspire to be like them or to know as much as they did. Now, this doesn't just come by accident, right? So one of the ways to stand out and be viewed in high regard as a nurse is to be skilled and knowledgeable. A nurse who has a thirst, a desire for personal growth, will constantly work to sharpen their skills and to add to their knowledge base. And this can be through personal study. This can just be through continued intentional involvement in any activities that will help them to grow. You can do this from continuing education. You can do this by practicing your clinical skills, by volunteering to see or do things that you've never gotten a chance to do before, instead of shying away from new challenges, right? So if you struggle with reading an EKG, for instance, or decoding a lab or interpreting an X-ray, just keep on learning those things. Don't say, well, it doesn't matter, I'm not an NP and I'm not a physician, I don't need to know that. Knowledge is never lost. You are a healthcare provider and your learning will never stop. You're going to be a lifelong learner. And such a nurse who strives to gain more knowledge will become exceptional at his or her job. And when you're that way, you cannot be ignored because you will always be a great asset to your unit and you will be respected by your peers and other healthcare providers. Obviously, nobody wants to work with a nurse or any professional for that matter who appears unintelligent and who lacks the desire to apply themselves. And that kind of a nurse who works that way will kind of contribute to ruining the image of nursing, because people generally make blanket conclusions, right? It won't just be Nurse John is so-and-so. It'll be nurses are like this or like that. So whatever you do as a nurse can cause us to lose respect in the eyes of others or to gain it. When you are judicious and you are committed to growth, the kind of nurse who can promptly notice changes in patient status and effectively communicate them. You can catch on to potential medical errors. You are, solutions driven because you think critically, you are innovative, and overall you are masterful at your job. You will gain the respect of your colleagues, you will gain the trust of your peers, and also you will gain the trust of your patients, right? So staying updated on the latest medical advancements, procedures, policies, and technologies altogether just shows dedication to professional growth. The next thing that nurses can do to gain greater respect is very simple: show respect for our patients and empathy towards them. As nurses, we get the opportunity to enrich the lives of patients in a vital way. We treat them with compassion, we treat them with kindness, we treat them with utmost respect. We have the chance to empower our patients by providing them with education, with information, with resources, and just the skills they need to actively participate in their own care and make informed decisions about their health, right? So by doing these things, by educating them, by empowering them, by treating them with respect, we can make a significant difference in their experience. And I think that this will impact their perception of the brilliant nurses who care for and who advocate for them. If you want respect from the public, if you want respect from your peers, you must learn to yourself treat others with respect that is mutual. Number 3, so as nurses, you must realize that in your role as a healthcare provider, you work in collaboration with physicians and you are not their underlings. You all work in a multidisciplinary team and you work together for the care of patients, and you all depend on each other as essential members of the same team. So learn to communicate with physicians and other members of the team with respect that is mutual, without placing yourself in a position of subordination to them, okay? Now, this does not mean that you are rude or you're dismissive of anyone's expertise, no. But it means that you are well aware of your own expertise and that you can confidently articulate your concerns, for instance, about a patient, right? Because one of the distinctive attributes of nursing really is the round-the-clock monitoring and intervention that we provide in patient care. And this is what differentiates us from other healthcare workers, right? We are there round the clock. So in essence, we are the eyes on the ground at all times in the life-saving care that we provide after years of training is indispensable. So nurses, do not lower your gaze, don't trivialize your knowledge and your training, because your skills are as essential to patient recovery and experience as anyone else's on the healthcare team. All right. So let's move on to number 4, right? Another important way that nurses can gain more respect is by taking up leadership and decision-making opportunities. This is so big, okay? Now, as nurses, particularly those working in hospital settings, there is a rampancy of burnout. We are hearing that word everywhere before COVID, after COVID. You know, I imagine many of us just want to go do our work and go home, right? The family demands on nurses, who are primarily female and, you know, largely responsible for, I'm sure, the domestic front. I know it's not in all cases, but because we're women, we have those household obligations in addition. We have the spouse, we have the children, we have their school runs, we have homework, we have to feed them, we have to drive them to sports activities, and on like that. Yes, we have a lot on our plate, right? It's a lot to carry. And we know that women at a certain point in their lives, especially during the childbearing and rearing years, will have the bulk of home front responsibility. So that usually reflects in their presence in leadership roles, where the men will naturally be more present. And yeah, I understand that, you know, life is busy outside of the 4 walls of a hospital. I can relate. I have a toddler. She takes up my entire day. You know, it's a wonder we can find time to do other things. But despite all of this, research has found that there was no lack of desire for nurses to move into leadership roles, right? So even though we were so busy and we had so much to do, we still desired leadership roles. But the thing is that nurses face a number of organizational and systemic challenges. And some of these challenges include social and cultural expectations around nursing as a gendered profession. And so the social view of caring as a feminine role contributes to this devaluation of nurses in leadership, right? The second thing is an internal perception of what leadership roles entail. So there's a research that I found that organizations themselves may consciously or unconsciously, you know, contribute to keeping nurses away from these top roles. They noted that executive committee members tended to undervalue the commitment and the skills of nurses, and they may exhibit unconscious biases around gender, around age, and around professional accomplishments. All right, and finally, the third barrier was a lack of organizational support and resources to encourage diverse leaders. So many workplaces, even now, still lack adequate work-family integration. And so a lot of women may feel pressure to choose their home life over their career goals, right? I know as a mom, one of the things that I now look out for with employment that I never even considered before was childcare. So if a company can somehow factor childcare into their employment package, or even have a fully functional daycare in-house, wow, it would make all the difference, and they would just automatically stand out to me as more attractive. But if you don't have to deal with this, you will likely never think of it. And this is why I think diversity is so important in leadership, so that diverse interests are taken into consideration in decision making. Okay, guys, so I want to share with you an article I recently read. It was published on the AACN journals, and it's titled Built for Advocacy. And it talks about the importance of nursing voices in policy making, not only in leadership within the workplace, but in decision making on a local, state, and federal level, right? So the author says, if you're not at the table, then you are on the menu. And that means, unfortunately, policies that affect nurses will be made without a single nurse in the room. So it is up to us to be present and vocal at healthcare policy tables. Something really powerful that I had always been curious about is this next piece right here, right? And she just confirms some of my own perceptions. So she continues on to say this: medicine is the best example of a profession that recognized this situation long ago. She says the American Medical Association and its member state medical societies have spent decades and millions establishing a foothold in Congress and state legislatures. That investment of time and money is reflected in their inordinate influence over health policy and funding decisions. They have also promoted the worldview that physicians must be consulted on and must agree with legislation to update other healthcare disciplines' scope of practice, end quote. So medicine has got it down to a science, guys. They have long understood, who the key players are in society, and they have strategically positioned themselves as influencers in those spaces. And then two big ones being media entertainment and policy. And so those are the two big drivers of public opinion and public interest. So as nurses, we really do have ways to go. But I think that if there was a greater understanding and a greater respect for the profession, then decisions that affect nurses directly and nursing as a profession would not be made without the direct input of nurses. And so it is so important that as nurses, we take active measures to get involved on boards, on panels, in local politics, whatever your interests are, and proactively seek opportunities for these leadership in your spheres of influence. We may not see ourselves in that light, but with our set of skills and innovative capability, who better to step into those roles of leadership, right? So let's respectfully advocate for our seat at the table of decisions that directly affect our practice and our patients, because we are at the helm of the care of our patients 24/7. So the more we show up, the more we speak up, the more we don't remain comfortable to sit on the sidelines, the more respect we're going to gain. And not only that, but the better our working conditions will be. All right, so let's move on to number 5. I'm going to dial it back a smidge and just talk about a personal pet peeve of mine. Now, this is personal, right? But it's something that I think may keep us in a bad light to the public, and that is physical appearance. Okay, now, this really pertains to every part of life, in every profession. So don't bite my head off for, for talking about it. But I honestly think that this right here carries a lot of weight, okay? Because people judge a book by its cover. Whether we like it or not, it is nothing we can help. So what we need to do is get our cover looking appealing as we continue to develop and improve upon the script, right? The cover is very easy to fix. And this is what I mean. While the core work that we do as nurses is the most important, it's our assessment, it's our management, it's our education, it's all of that. Still, let's not neglect how we show up physically, right? And I'm talking about the long fingernails, the long eyelashes, the excessive makeup, the poorly fitting or wrinkled scrubs, all of it. And I know, I can hear it now. You guys are like, we have so much to worry about. We don't care about all of that. Yes, I hear you. But guys, please understand how important this is, right? Who are you more likely to trust with your care or to respect with your care, right? Without a word being spoken, this person right here or this person right here. Okay. As nurses, we have to realize we have a long way to go in reforming public opinions about ourselves. And, guys, I don't mean this to sound negative, but we need to continue to be at the top of our game in order to undo much of the bias and stereotype that already exists. And yes, this is going to take some time. We don't know how long, but I think that it is a goal that is worth fighting for. It is my personal goal. It's my personal mission, at least. So I want to advocate to do all we can to reach that goal. So again, just very simple, tidy appearance, good fitting, clean scrubs and shoes. I mean, honestly, this really should go without saying, but I don't want to assume or leave anything out because people may not think that certain things are important, but they are, right? So just toning down on the makeup, the obscenely long artificial nails, the eyelashes that are like this much, the excessive chatter, even gossip in public spaces like the nursing station. Those things they're a no-no, okay? I understand, right, that having a great working environment is key. And it really does keep us all sane during a stressful day. I know that, we like to get together, nurses, MAs, physicians. Y'all will just kind of typically joke around at the nurses' stations and just have a laugh, right? But one thing I've noticed is that the wise ones will usually know when to shut it down and step away. They don't just carry on, because there's a point when that much chatter can appear unprofessional and can start to paint you in the wrong light. So yes, while at work, there is a time to socialize. It is a great way to de-stress. And, we all do it. It's helpful. It's therapeutic. But there is also a time to dial it back respectfully, especially in front of patients and, other coworkers. Okay. So in addition to that, I would say also be mindful of your social media presence and your social media conduct. Okay. People really do associate the actions of one person with a collective group. Just being honest, right? So if, for instance, a lady in scrubs was recorded fighting out in the street and somebody posted that on social media, right? People will immediately say, oh, they saw a nurse fighting and, out in public. They don't know if that was a nurse. They don't know if it was a dental assistant. They don't know if it was a radiology tech. They don't know if it was a physician. You see a female in scrubs and you immediately think nurse, right? So that's the perception. So for the sake of our honor and respect as a profession, we must be careful how we portray ourselves physically and on social media. My next point is this come one, come all approach to admissions at some nursing schools. Guys, I don't know if you have seen some advertising for nursing schools and it's like, no wait time, finish your program in 2 seconds. I don't know how you guys feel about that, but I personally just have such an aversion for it. Okay, now hear me out. While we want the brightest talent to pursue nursing, when it is advertised like any and everyone can come, I think some people may be turned off by the idea that nursing is not challenging enough to deserve the brightest minds, right? And the public may then view nursing as a profession that can be easily entered into by anyone and by everyone who's just willing to pay for it. And that's the wrong image, because nursing schools are typically highly competitive. And the majority of applicants can attest to this. In fact, I remember when I applied to nursing school, I actually went in as a transfer, and I was told that it would be almost impossible to make it in. So I made sure I made good grades. I did everything I could to stand out as a top-notch candidate, right? And I was elated when I got accepted. But when I see programs that just advertise their schools as though, they will accept anyone, just as long as you can pay for tuition, you can come right in, then you may end up attracting those that really don't want to be there for the right reasons. And so although exclusivity by itself is not the determining factor of prestige, I think that exclusivity coupled with a high quality of education can promote prestige in nursing. And I will leave it right there. So let's move on to our last point. So my final point, which I think may cause a fight in the comments because it is quite controversial, right? So bear with me. And, we can have discussions in the comments. It's fine. But one more thing that I know has been debated over the years is the different entry points into nursing. So for those who may not understand what I mean, currently there are entry points into nursing that are different levels. So there's a 2-year associate's degree. You can enter with a licensed practical or vocational nurse certificate. And then the more traditional route is the bachelor's degree. And each of these entry points can practice. They just won't all have the same scope, right? With the BSN degree having the broadest scope of practice. So before I comment, I'm going to read a small piece of an article about this topic that really captured my attention, and I think it most closely speaks to my position. So it's an article from the Journal of Peri-Anesthesia Nursing, and it's written by Dr. Hooper. And I'm going to put all of that in the description, okay? So I'm going to read it. So it says the U.S. healthcare system, and particularly the acute care delivery system, is on the brink of utter collapse, an event that will be accelerated without the rapid expansion of wider, more diverse, and easily accessible avenues to a nursing career, end quote. So in essence, during COVID, right, we saw a huge exodus of nurses. They left the bedside. I think that number might have been around 100,000. And this was due to burnout, due to frustration, mismanagement of resources perhaps, nurses just not feeling appreciated or well compensated for all the labor that they were putting in. So I think nurses who were already previously frustrated had now reached their peak, and COVID was just the breaking point. And so this is the utter collapse that she's talking about in healthcare, right? This is what she's referring to. I'll read on. It says, for many years, I advocated that indeed the BSN should be the preferred route of entry into the profession. I do still think that the BSN is the most rapid route to advancement in the profession. If advancement into management, education, advanced practice, or research is what one desires, end quote. Okay, so again, she did hold a position for BSN as the entry point prior to this critical shortage, which I still do, mainly for the uniformity and just the standardization. All right, so she continues. We must, however, embrace all avenues of nursing education to survive the current crisis, all while increasing the diversity of the nursing profession. Okay, end quote. So it's the only reason it seems that she's open to embracing all avenues is in order to survive the crisis, which I think is valid, right? We don't want the healthcare system to collapse. We don't want the patients to suffer, because first and foremost, the patients would bear the consequences for it. And then of course there are those who just cannot afford a BSN route right away because we know it's expensive, but those people would make for fantastic nurses. So taking all those things into consideration, I can empathize on those grounds. But you see, guys, regardless of how much shortage there is within other fields, they never modify their standards of entry. They never change them. They keep it standardized, right? And I think this helps to promote a reputable image. So take physicians, for instance. Their approach to physician shortage is to increase funding for faculty development, is to increase interest in the field, is to support residency and fellowship training. But they never for once suggest lowering medical school training time to 2 years as opposed to 4, so that they can push out more physicians, right, in order to meet the demands. In fact, what they do instead is they integrate more advanced practitioners into primary care roles, right? So we're the ones who are being used to fill the gaps, but to deviate from their standards, never. And I think that we can learn something very important from that. So I'll put all the links in the description so that you guys can take a look. Okay, so finally, the same lady says, so in doing so, however, that is in embracing all these other avenues and entry points, in doing so, we should also realize that the associate degree should never be the end goal. There must be the expectation that the ADN nurse, which is the associate's degree nurse, will advance to a minimum of a BSN, which is a bachelor's, ideally within 3 to 5 years of entry into practice. And that is because the fundamental content that differentiates a baccalaureate nursing education from an associate's degree includes structured exposure to leadership and to management, incorporation of research into practice, evidence-based practice, societal health concerns, as well as community health, right? And I think what she is alluding to here is that with the BSN preparation, there is an expanded curriculum beyond patient care that includes domains like research, domains like professionalism, healthcare informatics, healthcare technologies, and those kinds of things. And these pillars should be built across the board. To standardize the curriculum for every entry-level nurse would make implementation of that goal possible. That's what I think we're saying, right? So just like we don't get to pick what classes we take for our major based on what we like or what we enjoy, in the same way, I think that a single pathway and a single entryway into nursing will ensure this uniform training, uniform knowledge base among and across all the nurses. And this approach would create kind of like a level playing field, right? And it would allow nurses to choose the roles based on preference, whether it's managerial, whether it's bedside. And they're not going to have to choose roles based on licensure, qualifications, or restrictions. And the whole time, they continue to maintain a standardized knowledge base. And, guys, I don't want you to hear what I'm not saying. No, this is not a knock on the skills of an ADN prepared nurse or their ability to pass the NCLEX, okay? So please, let's not argue about, who can run circles around the other, because that is not the aim here. It's not, right? The goal is just for uniformity of knowledge and scope of practice, right? And I also think that since finance is probably one of the major limitations of students not pursuing a BSN, then the pay really needs to reflect that, because the cost of getting a BSN nowadays is astronomical and it only continues to rise. Probably if that need can be met, it might help people feel more strongly about pursuing a 4-year degree, okay? So guys, I want to know, what are your thoughts on this? I know this is a very touchy topic, I do. And my argument is not that associates prepared or practical nurses do not provide quality care to patients, because research has shown that they do, so that is not the argument. However, I think that the various pathways and levels into nursing can create an impression of inconsistency or lack of standardization, and that may potentially expose us to criticism from the public and other healthcare professionals. All right, y'all. That's it. That's it for me. Okay, so I'm going to recap one more time those 7 items. The first is staying informed. Number 2, treating patients with respect and empathy. Number 3, mutual respect for the healthcare team. Number 4, involvement in leadership, innovation, and decision-making opportunities within and outside the workplace. Number 5, physical appearance and social media presence. Number 6, exclusivity and quality education. And number 7, standardized entry points into nursing. Now, guys, I know that not all my points will be received well. It won't sit well with everyone, but my intention is not to offend, but just to express my opinions. So please let me know your thoughts in the comments. This is a safe space. Guys, no fighting, no arguing. And also, what are some other things that you think nurses or nursing as a profession can do more or less of in order to foster a more respected image? Thank you again. Thank you so much for watching. I appreciate you guys stopping by. And until next time, bye-bye.